Hello and welcome to the Meltdown podcast. I'm Elie, and joining me today is Patricia Biondo. We're both English teachers based in Munich, Germany, and we are both contributors to Melta News and members of Melta Podcast team. And of course, those who know me know my channel, Teachers Lounge. So don't forget to take a look at it at the end. Hi, Pat. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, Elie.
Okay, good to see you too. So first things first, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers, some information about you, about your background, and about your experience in teaching, just uh, a
Yeah,
short
okay.
summary.
Yeah, so basically I started my academic career when I was 16 at UC Berkeley, and I won a lot of awards there in the field that I was in, and then that sent me to Germany. I got a DEAD Fulbright Fellowship to come at the university here to do research after my master's degree. And then I was called back to Berkeley to do my first teaching there. And so the point I'm making about this teaching experience, this is my first teaching experience at the University of California, Berkeley. And, we had no teacher training. You're an expert in the field at the university, you're an expert in the field. And so you just do what you do. And my professor, when I started there, was Wolfgang from Heidelberg. And he sat with reading his notes to our lecture, and he looked really bored. He was like, yeah, so then, and so, what I have learned over the years is it's one thing to be an expert in a subject matter, and it's another thing to be able to convey it in a way which people can understand. And so basically I decided not to continue my academic career, and I fell in love with Munich, and I came back, and that's how I transferred my skills to English teaching, which has been a rich and rewarding journey, except for payment, naturally. Actually, you mentioned before we might do some questions about how teachers are treated, and in the United States, they're, I'd say, greatly undervalued, and the same in all the countries I know about, really. Even though in Germany you have the civil servants, which is a very good thing on the one hand. On the other hand, you have in Germany, the civil servant, the teacher can do what they want. You can hardly touch them. They're like the doctors. There's no malpractice. The parent's opinion doesn't matter. And in the United States, the parents are the taxpayers, and their opinions matter. So it's one of those opposites. But in both cases, I think teachers need to be much more respected. And of course, you and I, as freelance teachers or teachers who are not in the German system, you're kind of in no man's land, which we do, I think, for the love of it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Well, we'll get to that at some point during the podcast. Uh, the first question which I would like to ask, based on your experience and background, how do you think is the best way to motivate, let's say, clients? Nowadays we don't call them students, we call them clients.
Right.
And you know that sometimes most of them come not because they want to come to the lesson, but because they have to come to the lessons. And of course, that causes some kind of barrier to uh, transfer the ideas or the new information to them. From your point of view, how would you motivate again the clients to study or to acquire the new knowledge, and at the same time make the learning process as closer as possible to their needs?
Mhm. Well, that's an excellent question, Elie. And indeed, the thing is that some of them do come because they have to come. And, I think you and I were working, as you say, with clients. These are highly educated professionals. They have big, big, big responsibilities. But maybe they were from East Germany, or they were from other countries, and they didn't learn English in school, or they learned English in school in a catastrophic way, which made them afraid to speak English. So they have to do something that in some cases they don't really want to do. And that, as you say, makes motivation more difficult. But the key, I think, is to connect with them. Connect with them. Why is this going to benefit them? Their time is extremely valuable. Time is one of the commodities we cannot buy more of. So what can we do to make them see that their risk-reward ratio is very worth their time? And one thing is, English is still the world language, and it's going to be useful for them for their entire career. It's not just something for this job now. It's not something to please the boss. It's something for their lives. And I had a really extreme example of this. I had one gentleman who was a very basic level of English, could hardly put a sentence together. He had so few interests and he was so overworked, and such a wonderful person. And so what did we do? We ended up, he liked Duolingo, and he would do that for a half an hour every morning. Now, you see, I said, okay, after you finish your job, you still have English as a world language. No, I don't travel abroad. No, I don't. Everything was no, 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 no. And then every time we would do something, grammar, whatever, he would say, schwierig, schwierig, difficult, difficult. So I would say, okay, we're going to reframe this. You see, we have to reframe it and to make it fun. Okay, so we ended up talking a lot about soccer, which was one of the things that he really felt passionate about. So that's where, it's like abandoning the idea of some kind of fixed curriculum and going with what is relevant for them, what turns them on, what excites them, what is worth their time, their valuable time, what is worth their time. And some of these online language sites, I think, they have like games and things. Some people love that. That's the way to reach some people. So I think the point is to be completely open, to listen to what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and to encourage them to do whatever it is that they find rewarding. And that all adds up. Every day, every moment, all adds up.
I see. I see. Well, the next question, which is the key to a follow-up question, if you're talking about teaching, which one do you personally prefer, the online or the face-to-face, and why?
Well, of course, that's a big question today. Personally, I prefer the online teaching, which is a very flexible format because we can go to any website anytime. We can do everything we can do in the classroom, except for, personal interaction. And Elie, I know that for many people, the personal interaction, each of us has an energy field around us, and you can feel other people's energy, and you don't have that online. So the point of view of having different clients at different times of the day, it's wonderful to do it online because you don't have to go to different locations, running around, spending a lot of time as a freelance trainer to visit different clients. But on the other hand, of course, in the classroom, you can do things as a group that you could not do. But with the one-to-one and with the small groups that I have, and I've had big groups of 50 online from all different places, of course, it's good for the environment to not have to do all that traveling. All the people taking trains to attend a seminar someplace, when you can do it online, it's very rewarding. So I feel that the online lessons can be just as effective as the classroom lessons, basically. But the point is to really listen to them, to really involve each person so that they really are included in the boat, that we have one journey, we have one goal, and we're all on board.
Okay, so as teachers, we know that, and I totally agree. But how do you think we can convince, let's say, old school students that everything you can, except for the eye contact,
Mhm.
everything you can do in offline or during an offline lesson, you can do in an online lesson and even more. How can we convince, or let's say, help the students understand that in online you can actually do much more? Of course, I'm talking in general because in some schools you are required to work face to face or to work offline. I'm not talking about these clients. I'm talking about the clients who do have the choice.
Well, you know, Elie, I've never actually had that issue. I mean, my clients have taken it for granted that we meet online, and it saves them time. You know, sometimes they're at home office. I've even done lessons in the car with the telephone. This works very well. So I've never actually had that problem.
I see. Can you share with us some websites that you share with your students? What your website usually use to have some exercises, maybe some games? You mentioned games in the beginning of the podcast. Can you share some of them with us?
Well, I think the number one website, which I've two websites I really love and highly recommend. Well, three, let's say. One is the dictionaries, okay? You know, Oxford English Dictionary, Merriam-Webster. We need the examples. And here in Germany, people love Leo. Now, Leo, you know, my favorite example here is you have in English, you have the word hub. You know, a hub is a very clear picture. You've got the wheel, you've got the center of the wheel, that's the hub. You've got the hubcap that goes over the hub. And of course, if you look at Leo, what do you have? You have 20 explanations for what a hub is, and they're all completely different German words, and there's no bottom line. So you see, I think that that's the thing in English is the languages do work very differently. And so to have a good understanding of the way that English works, you really need examples. And I'm sure you too, you've seen they translate it from German, and then you have English. It's nice English words. The words are nice, okay? But reading the whole thing together, there's no meaning. There's no meaning. They totally missed it because they're taking the German, they're putting it in English words. Now, of course, now we have the challenge of ChatGPT. Now, how much of translations are done these days? How much of the work in translations is done with ChatGPT? And who checks if it's correct or not? You need a native speaker to see the effect. You know, every word has a feeling, a connotation, and a kind of a message. Yes. If you say evil, how do you feel? I say evil. You know, you feel, oh no. It has a physical effect. And people, you know, I think especially in our own language, that has a stronger effect. And when you're using a foreign language, to you, maybe it's just a word. And that's why you get a lot of bad language used in English, because they listen to the films, they listen to all the bad language which is out there, which I will not repeat. And it's just like, oh, it was in a song. Oh, it's cool. I'll use it. I mean, sometimes I'm so shocked to hear teenagers using horrible words. They think it's cool. Well, you know, it's not their language. They don't know the effect in English, and the effect in English has also been changing. Of course, there isn't the shock effect anymore of a lot of these bad words. So the dictionary is very important to see the context. And then the TED Talks are wonderful because you have the transcripts. And if it's too difficult for them, they can get the sound of the language, they can get the presentation style, and they can check the transcript, which is usually going to be in their own language too. So they can have the English and their own language. They can easily check what it means. And they have the different accents also of the different speakers. They have world-class speakers. They have subjects of every type to suit every interest. So the TED Talks are just fantastic to give them, you know, just say, look at the TED Talks, choose one of them, watch it, and you can tell me about it next time. You know, that's something. And, you know, like some of them are 3, 4, 5 minutes. Well, there's nothing they can complain about that, you know. I say, okay, when you're drinking your coffee in the morning, listen to the TED Talk and tell me about it, you know. And then the third one, of course, is Wikipedia. But Wikipedia is really good for if you have some German word, which is a complex technical word, and you think, well, I mean, maybe you've never even heard the word before because it's some kind of technical thing. So you put that into the German Wikipedia, and then you just click on the English. Oh, it's fantastic. And then you have all of the terminology in English, and you can compare, and of course, the different languages too. So these are great resources to let them know they can always find the language they need by looking at these resources.
I see. Well, you mentioned something about native speakers, which is today a trend. You said that only native speaker can explain the difference. So my question is, today, if you would like to study another language, not English, of course, I assume you speak German. Okay, do you speak Spanish,
I can manage.
Italian,
I can manage.
Chinese?
No.
Okay, perfect. Let's
Only,
let's take Chinese as an example.
only
Um,
Guangxi.
what would you like? Okay, you've got two options to study Chinese.
Uh,
Uh, a teacher of Chinese who is not a native speaker, or a native Chinese speaker who is not a teacher. Whom would you choose to be
well,
your or
Elie,
to be your teacher, and why?
that is a great question. And I just want to say that this raises the point of how do we learn well from teachers? And if you look at your life and I look at my life, I learned well from teachers who I could connect with personally, emotionally. My German teacher at UC Berkeley, I just loved her. We became friends. And, if she came bouncing into the classroom, and without her, I don't know how well I would have learned German at that time. So I think it really totally depends. I don't, that and exactly is the point too. It's not about classifying. It's not about putting these classifications. It's about what do you need and who can do it for you and who is going to reach you. I think it's really all about relationship. And that's the Chinese word that I know, Guangxi, relationship. And I think with English, more and more for me, that's the whole point of the whole thing for me is you connect with people, you share experiences, your heart to heart, your mind to mind, and you make each other's world bigger, So I would say that your question, I would even question asking a question like that. But I think you ask that because we have categories. And you're right. We need to get away from it has to be a native speaker. It has to be this or that. We need to get away from that. When we need to say, okay, try it out. How does it work? Do I feel good? Am I motivated? Am I learning?
I see. Okay, so next thing I would like to ask about is um, I think most people we deal with nowadays are adults who are either working or they are preparing for the first job. Um, Sometimes you may meet with some people who speak somehow fluently, but with some minor mistakes. Some others pay more attention to the grammar and the sentence structure, but they speak uh, slowly. For you, which do you think is a priority? Which do you think is better for, let's say, English job seekers? Do you think we should kind of focus more on, or do you think it's the priority that they speak fluently, ignoring some minor mistakes, or it's a must that they speak really well with as few mistakes as possible?
That's another great question, Elie. Thank you. And that's exactly the point. Is it correctness or is it fluency? And, we're living in the real world. And I believe for a long time now, we have had more non-native English speakers than we have had native English speakers. And, I had an aha effect probably 20 years ago when I would correct my students, at that time, students, about various things, no, that's not correct. Well, I think we have to get away from that idea of no, it's not correct. I mean, there are some things that are not correct, but the point is your message clear? If your message is clear, in my opinion, and I think in the real world, it's clear enough. And you have a lot of really important people who speak with a lot of mistakes. That's not the point. The point is your thinking clear? Is your message clear? Now, of course, if this person is going to be applying for a job at the Oxford English Dictionary, they're going to have to be correct. It all depends on. So that is the other thing, is context. Everything is context. Who is the audience? Who is this employer? Who are you talking to? What do they need?
Yeah. Well, that's why I've always been called grammar nerd, because I pay too much attention to grammar and I ignore the vocabulary, and that's caused me a lot of troubles learning German. Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, with German, you have so much vocabulary. It's so difficult, which we don't have, like the der, die, das, ich bin
Yeah.
gegangen, ich habe gesehen, all of that. Well, I mean, I think in German, I almost wonder if the Germans value their language more than we value our English these days, because I think that, a lot of people who are native speakers speak really, really, really primitive English. Wouldn't you say? Have you noticed that? And I think all of this slang, okay, if you're thinking, I don't mean English teachers, Elie. I mean,
Yeah, no, yeah,
the man on the street, like
yeah,
if I'm all of this slang, is come in, like you use a bad word because you don't know any real words, So it's very easy. You don't need a big vocabulary. So you get the
exactly.
shock effect, the impact, by using a swear word. And that's why the swear words have become more and more frequent. And look at the texting. We're living in a digital world where literature, where is the literature? See you,
Doesn't exist.
and so the value of, I mean, the beauty of the language, the poetry of the language, that's a completely different thing than the everyday communication in the digital world. But what we need to pay attention to as trainers, I think, is to really be sure that they know what are the danger areas. And one of the danger areas, for example, for Germans, is the word irritated. Now, if you say, I felt irritated by what you said, how does that make you feel, Elie?
Like maybe it's a red light. That's something. Okay, I should do something. Well, maybe it doesn't give, let me say, a clear image, but it's a sign that, okay, I'm doing something wrong. If I keep doing that, there might be a
So, I mean,
problem.
if somebody gets irritated by something you say, no matter how wrong you're doing it, I mean, that they're really a touchy person. I mean,
Yeah,
you can say, okay, Elie, I didn't understand your message. But, if you say I got irritated by what you said, it's like, wow, I can't even stand to listen to you. I mean, they have an emotional problem,
yeah.
So right away, you buttonhole them into your mind. You pay attention. Oh, this person gets easily irritated, annoyed, bothered. Even when we're just having a neutral, logical conversation, they get irritated, which is an emotional reaction. So you see, that is a completely different communication. They want to say, I didn't understand what you said. I was confused by what you said. So that sort of word is the type where you get a different reaction. Now, maybe you have had this too, that the client says, I have lived in Italy. See, my last name, Biondo, okay, Italian. So then they say, oh, Italian last name. Oh, are you from Italy? I have lived in Italy for 5 years. Okay, so what does that mean? Where do they live? Where do
Yeah,
they live
that's right.
now? So I think, okay, oh, this German person lives in Italy. Okay, they have lived in Italy for 5 years. They live in Italy. So I say, you must speak good Italian. This was at the beginning of my time in Germany, obviously, before I was able to translate. But when you're not able to translate, you listen to the words. So, oh, you have lived in Italy for 5 years. Where do you live? I live in Munich. Well, that's the wrong answer. You just told me you lived in Italy. You must speak very good Italian. No, no, I don't speak any Italian. Well, how could you not speak Italian when you lived in Italy for now? That's the sort of thing we need to tell them about. You see, that's the wrong message.
Yeah.
And that's where grammar is important, because some of the messages in the grammar, and that's those, so the vocabulary, which can be a misunderstanding, and the grammar, which can be a misunderstanding, those are the important points to tell them about, because then their communication does not give their message. It gives a different message. And once you get a different message, you see, look, you get total confusion. You don't live in Italy? Well, you know, you have to, people don't like to switch tracks. You're over here, you live in Italy, and now you say you live in Munich. I mean, it's total confusion. So, you know, we need to make it clear and to make them aware what are the danger areas.
I agree. Well, for the last part of the podcast, let's say since we came to Germany, since we are discussing, we reached the point when we discuss Germany. I like to ask you a question about the German educational system. I know that in the beginning you mentioned something about the teachers. Well, you have already answered that. I was planning to make it at the end, but you have already answered that. But being a teacher in Germany for quite some time, um, how do you think, or how do you see the educational system in Germany, especially when we hear a lot of people complaining about this system? um, Especially when we talk about, and also it's quite very important to listen to what you have to say about the intensive courses. You know that we always have intensive courses, like courses that last 5 days a week, uh, 4 or 5 hours a day. So I would like to hear what you think about these 2 points in 6 minutes, like maximum, if you can. Yeah.
Well, I think that what we've been talking about with our clients in companies, okay, in the real world, they have a job to do and it needs to be very concrete and very practical. Well, in the school system, you do have teachers who they've spent their life teaching children, and what has been their experience in English speaking companies? What has been their experience in the English speaking world? They're Germans who are teaching English in the German system as civil servants. And, you know, if I were to teach German, I would not see myself qualified to teach at a very, very high level, even though my German is perfectly fluent, because it's a big language and English is a big language. And I think that it's very difficult for a non-native speaker, which is what you have in the schools. Then you have to rely on them having a really good education. And who determines that? You know, it all depends on what teachers did they have, what experience have they had. And as I said, the whole issue of how to teach, I mean, that's another thing. I don't know if teachers in Germany, in the United States, we have teacher training, that's how to teach. You have in your classroom, you have many, many different types of learners. And then from what I've heard in the school system here, you still have, it's quite punitive, you know, you have the red marks. Wrong, 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 wrong. This is traumatic. This is a catastrophe for learning. No, it has to be, oh, look, you got 10 words right. Oh, good, way to go, keep it up, you know, and that's the thing where we English trainers now, you know, we benefit from that because these poor people don't learn in school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm dramatizing, but it is a real fact. And so I think that children especially really need to be encouraged and praised. And on the other hand, look at the online resources we were talking about. How many schools use those? Now the kids, they're going to go on to websites of all sorts. Are they getting the leadership to go onto useful websites where they're going to learn good language? So I think that the school system in most countries totally needs to be updated. And you know, the teachers need to be not thinking in terms of this is what you need to learn. Here you are, take it, here's the curriculum, swallow it, but in terms of, okay, what's interesting for you? Let's have a group over here that's the group for snowboarding. It needs to be everybody being totally involved. And I'm sure there are wonderful teachers out there. I'm just saying that when you're in a system and you have a test to pass at the end, you don't have the freedom to really give the people what they want and what they need as much as you do when you're in companies where maybe they need to talk only about IT or only about manufacturing, and they don't need to have perfect grammar. They need to have good grammar, which is adequate, but they don't need to have, Oxford University high-level communication. And how many leaders in the world today? I mean, as an American, I look at the leaders in my country. I would like to coach the leaders in my country about how to honor the principles of the United States and how to really be inclusive in your language, the audience, include all of the audience. And we're living in this polarized time, and the teacher too, they're also faced with people who are not Russian, Ukrainian, or whatever. We need to be a unifying force. We need to be peacemakers and peacekeepers, as well as actually teaching them a subject matter. And I really think that we learn through our heart and through our emotions.
I agree.
That's why they say if you want to learn a language, have a boyfriend or girlfriend in that language. Now, why is that? Your emotions are involved, okay? You have positive associations with it. You want to spend time doing it, and you're motivated. That's what you need for a language.
Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. It was really interesting to have this podcast with you. So thank you very much for joining me today. In just 10 seconds, just any final words before I say goodbye to the viewers? In 10 seconds.
Yes, listen with your heart and your mind.
Thank you very much.
Listen and be open with your heart and your mind. Yes.
Thank you, Patricia.
Together.
So
together, the brain and the heart. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Elie.
Thank you very much, Patricia.
The
dear viewers and listeners, you are going to have this video version and audio version for the Melted channel, and for Teacher Lounge viewers, you'll find the video, and I'll share the links in the description for both channels, so don't forget to check both of them. Thank you very much, and see you later in another podcast.